and welcome back to our reading of Otter by Katherine Applegate. We have finished part 1 and we are ready for part 2, which is called How to Be an Otter Pup. This section we're going to break into 2 different recordings. So in this video we're going to read the first half of part 2. And this says, our subtitle here is 3 years earlier. So we're going back 3 years before where we left off in part 1. It's called Day 1. When Otter was born to her mother, Ondine, she might well have been an inflatable toy. Her magical fur made her buoyant as a cork. A pup submerged will pop back to the surface like a furry balloon. A pup's life. Otter was her mother's 3rd pup, though only the 1st survived. And Ondine knew the drill, knew she would spend almost every moment with Otter on her stomach, clutching her newborn like a pillow with a heartbeat. Otter would drink and sleep, sleep and drink, drink and sleep. Pups have it easy, unlike their moms. Don't ask where Dad was. Otter fathers aren't exactly parent of the year material. And you've probably seen some pictures somewhere online of an otter mom holding her little baby on her belly like that. Leashed. Ondine could only dive for food when Otter was safely looped in long strands of kelp. Like a leashed puppy or a reined pony, it was the only way to be sure Otter would stay safe and wave-cradled. Still, more than a few pups came unmoored, drifting away like stray beach balls. The Otter Hair Salon. Ondine neglected her own health, devoting all her energy to Otter's survival, and that meant spending countless hours at the Otter Hair Salon. Otter's baby fluff would soon be replaced by the warmest fur on earth, up to 1 million hairs per square inch, a miracle of design. But it's the air bubbles otters add that keep them perfectly, impossibly warm and dry. Grooming means fluffing and blowing and teasing and separating and combing and licking and tidying and spiffying and cleaning and cleaning and cleaning some more. It isn't vanity. For otters, it's a matter of life and death. The ocean is a cold place to call home. Perfect. Otters don't fret much about what they're called. When you're all about survival, names take a back seat. Still, as the weeks passed, it became clear that Otter, O-D-D-E-R, was the perfect choice for such a squirmy, squeaky pup. She never calmed, nursing for a moment, then raising her downy head to see if something fun might be hiding just beyond the next wave. Day 28. 1 month in, and Otter was thriving, though Ondine could have used a break. Had a pup ever moved this constantly? Even in her sleep, cuddled close, Otter was restless, her front paws dream-busy, small and soft as a toddler's mittens. So much to learn. Ondine was not keeping up with her own feeding. She felt tired sometimes, but at least her milk was still coming. Soon Otter would have so much to learn: when to dive for dinner, where crabs lurked, how to eat a sea urchin. One vital trick Ondine would be teaching: using rocks for meal prep. Such time savers when you needed to crack open a crab or mussel. For weary Ondine, those lessons couldn't come fast enough. Tool use. When otters put rocks to work, humans call it tool use and applaud the ingenuity. Like chimps and corvids, octopuses and elephants, otters have been elevated, moved up a rung on the evolutionary ladder, though every day a new group seems to join the list of species that were smarter than folks thought. What to fear? Otter pups spend more time with their moms than some marine mammals. Still, they're born with teeth and ready to swim as soon as they shred their life jacket baby fur. They grow up much faster than human children do. Already Ondine tried to share the most important lesson she could with her pup: what to fear. Not that she was certain Otter was listening. It was never too early to learn how to stay alive, and so she reminded Otter whenever she could: stay away from sharks. Stay away from humans. Stay away from all that you don't understand. It felt wrong teaching the little one who made her cherish life to be afraid of it. But that was how things had to be, especially with a pup as heedless and wild-hearted as Otter. Day 32. One morning, Ondine awakened to unsettled air. The world smelled strange and storm-ready. She secured Otter extra tightly to a favorite strand of kelp. A quick dive for some urchins would help Ondine stave off hunger for a bit. After the storm, shifting sands might unearth new meals. Ondine took one last glance at her pup. Otter squealed with outrage at the abandonment, as she always did, while Ondine tried to shake off her feeling of unease. It was the dream she'd had last night, perhaps, or the coming storm that had her on edge. That's all it was. Otter dreams. Humans envy the way otters sleep on the water, paws linked, untroubled as lily pads. But otters don't just doze. Like other mammals, they dream. Flying dreams where they ride the thermals like hawks, and shivery nightmares where all their fur has vanished, and fretful dreams where they can't crack open a muscle, frantic as a student who's forgotten their locker combination. The newborn. There was a pup in Ondine's dream, newborn, needy and squeaking, though it wasn't Otter. Otter was there, though, full grown, in fact, and while she wasn't a mother or a sister or an aunt, she was somehow important to the little pup. Otter kept deep diving to escape the pup's demands. Its helplessness frightened her. When she couldn't hold her breath a second longer, she would rocket to the surface, only to find the pup still there, still asking for help. Dozens of times, Otter dove. Dozens of times she surfaced. Dozens of times the pup was waiting. "I can't do it," Otter kept saying. "I don't know how to teach her." And through it all, Ondine could only watch. Just a dream. A dream. It was just a dream, Ondine told herself again as she prepared to dive. The wind. Her mother was gone, searching for food, and once more Otter was forced to wait, fidgety and annoyed. The wind was not itself today. She didn't like the way it kept bullying the water. It was awful each time her mother left her alone. If you asked Otter, or any otter pup, life should be nothing but warmth and milk, cuddling and play, on demand, 24 hours a day. Otter reminded herself that her mother always returned, smelling of the baffling underwater world and ready again to wrap her pup in paws instead of kelp. Different. Otters are used to constant movement. The tides, egged on by the moon, never stop after all. But this day was different. The waves grew wild, flinging Otter this way and that, refusing to relent while she coughed and gasped. It was almost as if the ocean was angry at her, but how could that be? Rain. Rain came hard and lightning clawed the sky. Otter cried out, but her sounds were lost in water crashing and whitecaps boiling. Where is she? She's gone. And what if she is gone forever? Airborne. Pushed and pulled, the green and living harness meant to keep Otter safe, let loose. No one heard her screams. When the ocean finally discarded her, Otter was no longer afloat on a watery cushion that swayed and rocked. She'd landed somewhere cold and hard, and everything had stopped. Waiting. Otter shivered, choking and crying as she listened for her mother's return, waiting for the clasp of her paws and the scent of safety. The rain was just a trickle now, but where was the ocean? What was this rough, unmoving place? Too close. Harsh sounds soon came, nothing like bird calls, though they weren't gulls or terns or pelicans. New scents approached, too, not part of the water world she knew, and much, much too close. Shadows. Huge shadows loomed, cast by tall, tailless animals with hideous, too long 4 feet and flippers. And next came a touch, not her mother's, not easy and knowing, though not painful either, and the grip tightened, lifting her off the solid spot where the ocean had dropped her. She tried to fight her way free, hissing and snarling and scrabbling, but the animal that held her was strong, and she was not. Somewhere new. More movement, bouncing without waves where sounds she'd never heard before. She was somewhere new. The air had changed. It was cool and dry, not damp with the ocean's breath. A soft letting go happened, landing her on coarse fur, nothing like her mother's. Other animals came close, leaning in. She tried to struggle but couldn't move. She tried to squeal, but no one listened. Where is she? After a while, Otter gave up trying to fight. Without the circling waves and her mother's soothing touch, all Otter could think was, where is she? Where is she? Where is she? Until finally, exhausted, she fell into a dreamless sleep. Puzzle. The next day, Otter felt stronger. They wouldn't leave her alone, the animals, endlessly feeding and grooming and measuring and testing, as if she were a puzzle they needed to solve. They kept her in a box filled with a tiny piece of ocean. It was long enough for a little swim, wide enough for a twist or spin, and had a spot above the water for resting. At first, Otter feared their intrusions, but when the animals returned to give her warm food through a piece of rubber with a hole, even though it was never as satisfying as her mother's milk, Otter was grateful for it. Drowning. When she slept, Otter fought the ocean in her dreams, and always the question washed over her until she was sure she would drown in it. Where is she? Where is she? Where is she? Memories. Otter began to recognize each of the animals and even look forward just a little to their arrival. It wasn't like she had a choice. With every passing hour, it became harder to recall her life before this place. Her mother was warmth, Otter reminded herself. She was food, and for a while, at least, she was safety. But already, the threads of memory were beginning to fade and unravel. Chow time. Before long, Otter could no longer recall the taste of her mother's milk. It may have been creamier or sweeter than the liquid they brought her every 3 hours, but her stomach didn't seem to know the difference. When the animals were slow to arrive, Otter squeaked and complained, and when her meal finally appeared, she grunted her approval, and they made murmuring, relieved sounds. It was a conversation of a sort. Home away from home. Whatever this strange place was, it was becoming Otter's home. Home away from home. The animals who cared for her were mystifying. Their paws had stubby tentacles, their bodies were practically bald, and their guttural songs hurt her ears. Still, she could not deny that they were kind, and that they seemed, for some unknowable reason, to want her to live. And so there you can see a picture of these other animals, of course, are the humans that have rescued her and are taking care of her. Not otters. They weren't so bad, actually, Otter decided, these animals with their awkward paws and confusing noises. Although nothing they did was quite right, it was right enough. They weren't otters, but they certainly were trying to be. Scents. The first time she noticed the scent, Otter thought she was dreaming. The animals nursing her back to health always carried hints of other places with them. Sometimes it was the brine of salt water, sometimes it was the tang of fresh air, but from time to time she would recognize a scent that was a little like her. It was an ottery smell, rich and reassuring, but she'd seen no other otters there. It was a mystery, but then everything about this new life was a mystery. Swimming lessons. Several times a day, one of the animals would lift Otter out of her box of water and carry her to a bigger round pool, one with sky and sun above it, and breezes tingled with salt. She floated on her back while they pulled her by her flippers, carving lazy figure eights. Now and then Otter would clutch one of their paws between her own, and the cruise would repeat back and forth, and she rode the tiny waves. Whenever Otter was there, she knew she belonged to the water, and it belonged to her. Impossible. When she was happy in the pool, the animals watched her with care, clapping their peculiar paws and revealing their teeth and making breathy noises, and always Otter wondered what it all meant. They were impossible to decipher, these big, clumsy creatures. She would have to watch them carefully until she knew their ways. Perhaps the more she understood, the more she'd be able to get what she needed from them. Maybe she'd find her way back to her old life in the wild, although she was no longer certain what that might mean. Would her mother still be waiting for her, or would she have moved on to new places, new pups? Learning. Even as Otter was learning to navigate her new world, her caretakers were learning too. This wasn't their first attempt teaching survival skills to a pup, and it wouldn't be their last. Their plan was simple, on paper at least. Let 156 explore the ocean with the help of humans until she was ready to return to the wild alone. Still, the questions kept them up at night. What would 156 need to know on her journey back to freedom? Would instinct be enough to guide her? How do you turn a helpless, captive pup into a capable wild adult? If only they had a manual, one called How to Teach an Otter Pup How to Be an Otter Pup. It seemed they were going to have to write it themselves. All right, so we are halfway through part 2 of the story. You're going to come back for the next video and we will finish part 2 of Otter. Thanks for listening.